Hey y'all, welcome back. So just a couple of reminders of when we talk about vectors, there's three different, I guess you can call it different ways we measure vectors. We have what's called true bearing, quadrant bearing, and from the horizontal or from the horizon or any kind of that sort. So we're going to take a look at each one at a time. So when it talks about true bearing, think of kind of like a map, right? So you have your north, you have your east, south, and west. Anytime that you're given a vector that says it's true bearing, you always start from the north and then you go clockwise. So what does that look like? So let's say we have a true bearing vector degree of measure, let's say 50 degrees. So that means that my 50 degrees would be measured from the north clockwise direction. Let's say that we're given, and think of each quadrant as 90 degrees, right? So here we have a 0 degrees, and as we go clockwise, we have 90 degrees, 180, 270, so on and so forth, right? So if we are given let's say a 210 degree true bearing vector, then 210, that's somewhere between 180 and 270. Maybe it's a little closer to 180 than it is to 270. So our vector, if we were to draw it, would definitely be closer to the 180. And again, that would be measured from the north all the way to here, and let's say that's 210 degrees. So that's for true bearing, right? So you always start from the north and go clockwise. For quadrant bearing, it's always going to be measured either from the north or the south first, and then you are either going to go towards the east or the west direction, right? So we can say it's always north or south, and then we can say towards east or west. So something or a vector that can be quadrant bearing, maybe we can say 45, well, let's not do 45, let's do 60 degrees east of north or northeast. That means that we would measure from the north towards the east, and we would measure 60 degrees. So one way they could write that vector is north 60 degrees towards the east. And then another vector that we can draw, maybe we can say west of south or southwest, and again maybe we can say 30 degrees or 80 degrees or whatever it is, right? So somewhere over here, point is that the degree, let's say 80, the degree would be measured from the south first and then towards whatever other direction you're going. It's either going to be west or east, right? So here, south first, and then we measure 80 degrees towards the west. You have to be careful here because depending on the problem that you're looking at, they will give you specific directions, or not directions, but specific poles that you're going towards, right? So they can say something like 20 degrees north from the east, which you can interpret that. So 20 degrees going north from east, which is mean that you're really going, so if, let's do this, so 20 degrees north from east, that means that we would start east and we would go 20 degrees that way, right? But if we wanted this to be true bearing, then the difference would be 70 degrees from the north, right? So we gotta read it, interpret it, and kind of take it as is and kind of create our own vector, if you will. So that's quadrant bearing. So basically all your angles, if it's going to be quadrant bearing, it's either going to come from the north or it's going to come from the south first, and then either towards the east or to the west. And all your angles for quadrant bearing are going to be somewhere between 0, we'll put alpha for angle, somewhere between 0 and 90 degrees, because if you think about it, once we go past 90 degrees, then it's no longer going to be northeast, it's now going to be south towards the east, right? So that's kind of what we got to be careful with. Quadrant bearing anywhere from 0 to 90. And then we have the last one, which is from the horizontal, and that's kind of what we're used to a little bit more. So from the horizontal, it means literally from the horizontal, right? And we kind of measured how we did for when we talked about the unit circle, right? So the unit circle we measured in degrees counterclockwise, moving that way, where 0 started here, and then everything else kind of followed suit, right? So that's 90, 180, 270. And so any angle that's giving you from the horizontal or from the horizon, then we assume it's kind of what we're used to. So we can say always start from the horizontal and we go counterclockwise, right? And so let's say we have a 120 degree angle from the horizontal. 120 degrees would be somewhere over here. And again, that angle would, and so that angle would be measured from the horizontal all the way over here, 120 degrees, right? And so those are the three, I guess, directions that we have when we talk about vectors and the locations that we go in, or the direction that we go in, right? So it's either going to be true bearing, quadrant bearing, or horizontal. One more thing. So for for true bearing, you're always, like, if they don't specify whether it's quadrant bearing or horizontal, but you're given a 3-digit vector, like for example, if you're given 25 degrees, then we assume that it is going to be true bearing, right? So for true bearing, your angle is, or your vector is going to be given as a 3-digit number. So for example, a 25 degree angle would be 0.25 or 0.25. That would assume that it is a true bearing.